Hello, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me, I've got Paul Thornton, and we're going to be talking about his book. The book is called Leadership, Are You Providing the Right Amount? I found it really interesting, Paul, because you've written a lot of books about leadership. It's kind of the book that we needed next. Before we dig in, where can people find you?
I'm active on LinkedIn. I try to post something there several times a week on leadership and stuff like that. So that's probably the best place.
So explain to me the inspiration for this, because you've written a lot of books about what is leadership. So it's directive and it's but you're so right. How do we get that balance between the different styles of leadership, and how do we get it right? So what was your inspiration behind it?
Well, a couple different things. One, I play tennis and I have a tennis coach, and a couple times my tennis coach would give me instructions on doing something, but he would give me like 5 or 6 things to remember. And I found it was too much. It was almost confusing, and it didn't really help me improve my game. I was distracted. I was trying to focus on too many things. So that was one thing. The other thing, I observe a lot of speakers make presentations, and I've noticed that a number of them go into so many details, or they provide so much information that their big idea, their main point gets lost, gets buried in the detail. So this idea of, providing too much information or too little information, or when you're coaching someone, giving them too many instructions versus not enough instructions, kind of got me curious about, what is the fine line, and how do you know how much feedback or monitoring or setting goals, whatever it might be, where's the fine line between too much and too little? That kind of got me thinking about this whole idea, and that led to the book.
So what's the difference between managing and leading?
Well, for me, I think managers operate within the status quo. They use the current methods and procedures and processes to get things done, and that's good. Leaders, I think, want to change the status quo. They want to improve it. They want to redesign it. They want to do something bigger and better. So here again, you need balance here. Too much change is as bad as too little. I was reading about one company that, had like 18 different change initiatives going on at the same time. Overwhelming. People were confused. They didn't know what was a priority. It was stressing them out, not good. On the other hand, companies that don't change at all, they kind of just keep doing the same old thing day in and day out. They're in trouble, and they don't stay up, with what the customer wants and needs, and that becomes a problem as well. So again, finding that optimal point of what's the right amount of change I should be pursuing and implementing is really key to be successful.
And so what is the fine line between too much leading and too little leading? I mean, how do we get that balance?
That's the $64,000 question, Tim. It's kind of, a great leader has good judgment. They have good wisdom. They kind of have a sense of what's appropriate. You also have to think about what is required for the marketplace. If the marketplace is changing dramatically and customers' needs and wants are changing dramatically, well, you maybe have to make some, big changes, significant changes. So evaluating the situation, evaluating the people, kind of looking at all the factors, and also getting input from other people. I think that's really important. What are customers thinking? What's the competition doing? Looking at the big picture and getting clarity around what changes are needed for our company to succeed and win in the marketplace.
Just to pick up on a couple of the
Yeah.
comments, first of all, is to say hello to Andrew. He's a regular watcher of ours. And LinkedIn user, sorry, I don't know your name, LinkedIn user. It's because you haven't given permission in your LinkedIn profile to share your details. I would say that leaders inspire to do the status quo the right way, establishing the right culture. And yes, leaders also change the status quo as they need to adapt and lead in the marketplace. What do you think to that, Paul?
I think that's very true. I think you have to adapt and you have to continue to evolve and change. Although I was thinking about this recently, the small town that I live in, there's a small sandwich shop that sells grinders or submarine sandwiches, whatever they're called. And they've been doing the same exact thing for 50 years.
Yeah.
There's been no change, same toppings, same menu, same process they use, and they've been very successful. So here's an example of someone or a company that hasn't changed. They have no intention of changing, and they've been successful for 50 years. Now, a year from now, will things go downhill or what? I don't know. I think you got to stay mindful of what's going on in the marketplace and, adjust accordingly. But as you and I both know, there's exceptions to every rule,
Yes.
and finding that optimal point between the extremes is challenging. And sometimes maybe you have to be at the extreme, like implement no changes. And other times you need to implement a lot of changes. You got to be at the other extreme.
So if we break leadership down into a number of areas, can you talk us through different areas where we can get the balance right? So, for example, coaching. How do we get the balance right there?
Yeah. Well, looking at the task, what has to be done, the work, the project, and looking at the person, their skill set, their experience, that type of thing, and how they're performing, observing how they're performing, what's going well, where do they need help, and then trying to provide coaching that will help them improve. Now, again, I'm a big believer in trying to give the person a few things, 1, 2, 3 things at the most that they can work on and improve. Now, you certainly can engage the person in the sense of how do they think they're doing, what would they like to improve on, getting their input. Trial and error too. You might, as a coach, give 2 or 3 suggestions and see how they do with that. And if that works out well, you might go on to another one. Or you might say to the person, am I giving you too much direction, too much information? Do I need to just focus on 1 or 2 things? What do they think? So experimenting, getting their feedback, finding out if what you're telling them or suggesting they do, is it working? Is change happening or not? As a tennis player, again, I get a lot of instruction on what to do and not do, and some of it works and a lot of it doesn't, so I have to keep going back to the coach and say, okay, I tried this, it didn't quite work. What do I need to do now?
So Andrew asks a question. Is there a divide between leaders' vision and the workforce implementing it?
I'm sorry, is there a divide or a division between it?
Is there a divide, sorry, I was trying to read it too quickly, between leaders' vision and the workforce implementing it?
Yeah, I think, you can have a vision, and leaders certainly have a vision or visions, and it's very clear in their mind and they can see it. Now, implementing it, of course, is a whole different thing, all of the steps and actions that are required to make it a reality is, can be challenging. Do I have the resources? Do I have the people? Do they have the skill set they need to implement what they need to do to achieve that vision? So there's a lot that goes into between having a vision and, in fact, implementing everything you need to do to make it happen. I had a student say to me in class, "I want to make $1 million." I said, "Okay, that's your vision, that's your goal, great." And I then said to him, "Well, how are you going to do that?" And after a long pause, he said, "I have no idea, no idea." So he had a vision, but he had no plan or strategy or approach that he even considered of how to get there, let alone implement all the steps that you'd have to take. So
in terms of we talked about coaching and how to get the balance right. What about collaborating?
well, I find today that there's some managers, some companies that seem to over collaborate on everything. They have to have a meeting and they have to discuss it and they have to get everybody's input and what have you before a decision is made. So again, too much collaboration can be problematic. It's time consuming. It takes you away from other work you maybe should be doing. It just, yeah, time consuming, I guess, is the best word. So that's an example of too much. At the other extreme, some managers want to make the decisions without any input. I'm the boss, I'll decide, this is what we're going to do. And people are left feeling like, I didn't get a chance to contribute my ideas. I don't really have a lot of buy-in. I don't support the decision, that type of thing. I used to be in the corporate world in a manufacturing company, and there we did a limited amount of collaboration and would make decisions fairly quickly. When I went into the academic world, I quickly found that you had to discuss and get everybody's input and buy-in. And our staff meetings, our faculty staff meetings would go on for hours with everyone pontificating on every possible angle of every issue that was coming up. And it was like totally different from my experience in the business world. So that's kind of example of how different cultures operate as well. So,
and what about delegation? Something that I love.
Yeah, you said once before to me that you're a good delegator, and that's
I would delegate my whole job and go and play tennis.
That's a great trait or skill for a leader to have. You have to delegate. The problem is we like to delegate or over delegate to the people we know will do a great job.
Yeah.
Right. Those one or two superstars we have, we keep loading their plate with more and more and more to do, and it can burn them out and frustrate them. So again, too much delegation to someone is not good. They're going to get stressed out. On the other hand, some leaders never delegate. They want to make all the decisions. They hold on to everything. They, want to keep doing their favorite work, and that's not good. It doesn't develop the person, and the leader or manager becomes a bottleneck in the operation. So again, finding that optimal point of am I delegating enough to the right people? Can I delegate more? One thing I used to do, I'd make a to-do list each day, and then I'd quickly look at the to-do list and I'd say, okay, who can I delegate this task to, or this action, or this or that? And oftentimes there were, a number of things I could quickly delegate to someone else. I didn't have to do it. And it frees you up to think about bigger pictures and alignment and organizational advancement and, the bigger strategic things you as a leader should be thinking about down the road projects and things like that.
And the final point is really about how can we get the balance right in terms of communicating? Because the saying is you need to communicate too much. Communicating too much is better than too little.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a biggie. Good question, Tim. Your big idea, I'm a big believer as a leader, as a podcast or whatever, you need to get clear on your big idea. What's the big point you want to get across? And then making sure you don't bury that with excessive examples or details or stuff like that. Over communicating, we talk a lot these days about information overload. It's very common. We inundate people with lots and lots and lots of information. It's too much, they can't process it all. So cutting it back, boiling it down to what's critically important, what's going to help the person the most in their job, what's going to help them understand the big picture as well as the task or issue at hand, and that type of thing. So again, I think the leader's got to do some reflection on, what's my big idea, what's my main point, what do I want to get across, and how am I going to get it across in a memorable way? That's part of it as well. Under communicating, some managers and leaders don't tell their employees much of anything. There's little information about what's our vision, how are we going to get there, what's our priorities. People are walking around in a vacuum and they're not sure what is most important or what the strategy is or what we're doing. So that's bad. So again, finding that point about what's going to be most impactful. And when you do find the optimal point, people are very appreciative of that. They value the coaching and they value the feedback and they value the direction you're providing them, because it helps them get clarity around what we're doing and why. When you overdo it or underdo it, they're confused and not clear and frustrated, that type of thing.
And finally, in the last 4 minutes or so, tell us about goal setting and monitoring, and what we can do to make sure that we're getting the right balance there.
Yeah, I was talking with a leader a while back, and the leader was kind of bragging about, we're tracking 42 goals on our dashboard, and on and on and on. And I was like, well, isn't that a lot of goals to be focused in on? No, it's great. We track everything. To me, that's way too much. A senior leader leading a group or organization, for that matter, needs to focus in on a few things, the most important, the critical few, right? Overdoing it, setting too many goals is problematic. Again, people get confused. They're not sure what the priorities are. At the other extreme, some companies only focus on the financials. It's all about the sales and revenue and profit and what have you. And there's nothing about customer feedback or employee feedback, or how is the key processes, how are they operating, are they efficient? So again, you need some balance, the balanced scorecard idea, that you got to have a cross section of goals and things that you're monitoring, but don't overdo it and don't underdo it. Find the right amount for your company, for what's needed for you to succeed and prosper and grow. So it's a simple idea, too much, too little, what's the optimal point? As I said earlier, I think it takes some wisdom and some insights of the leader to figure out what is the right amount of what should I be doing regarding this, setting goals, giving feedback, giving direction. And it varies with each person. Some people you're going to do more, some you're going to do less, My boss at work used to just give me something and say, please handle. I mean, that was his way of delegating, right? Please handle, take care of this. And that was the extent of it. He wanted me to figure out what the problem was and solve it. Other people, he'd go into more detail and explain exactly what the end result he was looking for. He'd let them figure out how to get it done, but that was his way of, adjusting to the needs of different people. So I think that's the challenging part of being a leader, is having the wisdom and insights and judgment probably a key word, to do what's needed to help the individual succeed.
Paul, excellent. Thank you so much for coming on again and talking about your new book, Leadership. Are you providing the right amount? And if I wanted to buy a copy, where can I get it?
They're sold on, all of my books are sold on Amazon. They're all very brief. They're like 50 pages or so, and they're very inexpensive as well. So Amazon has them all, and I think they're worthwhile. And I try to make my big ideas stand out in the book. So I'm trying to practice what I preach. So there you go.
And the thing about your books, Paul, is there's no fluff.
Yeah.
I mean, it is straight to the point, and they're not like big, thick books that you got to wade through. You know, it's the idea. This is it. Get it done.
Yep. I picked up a management textbook the other day, and it had 1,248 pages. And I was like, that is ridiculous. It's unneeded. You got to boil it down to the key things that managers need to do.
And so if we wanted more details about you, where can we find you?
Well, again, I'm on LinkedIn. My email address is pbthornton74@gmail.com. I do some coaching and some training programs here and there. I speak at conferences and things like that. So if I can help anyone out there, give me a call or look me up on LinkedIn, and we can see what we can do.
Thanks, Paul. I really appreciate it. And thanks for all the comments and questions again today. Really
all right, Tim. Thanks for having me on.